uniting together. So these are like the Muslims and the Jews are going to destroy the Christians. This is a huge shock that's going to destroy the world's faith when they see the Christians being slaughtered by the Jews. They're used to seeing it from the Muslims, but not the Jews. And now the Jews, in verse 17, you will be persecuted in synagogues. There's a huge change here. The Jews are in on this. And these are just some of the signs. We're going to read this repeatedly over in our signs, how that Christians will be persecuted in synagogues in Israel. This is why the Lord points to Israel, verse 23, when they persecute you. Who, Lord? Verse 22, for my name's sake. That's who? Those that have the name of Christ. Those that are called Christian. They're right there in the tribulation. And they're going to persecute you for his name's sake because you have his name. Now notice, as they're being persecuted in Israel, they've got to flee from city to city preaching the gospel. And Christ said, during the first 3.5 years, you will have not gone through all the cities with the message before he comes.
Did he, Jesus went, how many cities did he went through? Jesus himself, in his 3.5
We don't know. And how many cities were there back then? Probably more than there are.
No.
You know, I mean, more areas. Jerusalem's become smaller, or Israel's become smaller in land space than what they owned back then. Now, what is verse 22 saying? If you're enduring to the end of what? And you'll be saved. So if I'm enduring to the end of the first 3.5 year trib, I'll be saved from what?
From the next 3.5 years.
Great trib. So if I'm going to be saved, if I'm in the Middle East, and there is a tribulation going on, the Antichrist is there, and the Muslims are killing, and the Jews are killing Christians, and if I'm going to be saved as a Christian, right in the dead center, then that has to be the rapture. This is where the rapture will appear. In Matthew 10, verse 22. And we're going to show that over and over and over in our studies today. It's going to tell you, if you're enduring to the end, not enduring to the end of your life, it's enduring to the end of the time that you're in, that period, which is 3.5 years. And then the Lord will appear. Let's go to Matthew 24. We're going to try and join as much information as we can together. We're looking for signs of the times. Signs of the times. So we're going to read verses 4 down to 31.
And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world, to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then, if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory.
Amen. Okay, verse 31, sorry.
And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other.
Okay. We're going to go back to verse 4 to 8. 4 to 8, the beginning of sorrows. The signs of the beginning of sorrows. Now, when did the beginning of sorrows start? That's the first question. And I haven't got an answer till now. When did it begin? We know when it ends. It ends when the 3.5-year trip begins. That one ends. This one begins. But when did it begin?
When Noah came out of the ark.
When
Right.
Jesus Christ.
Because the ark was cleansed. Sorry.
I think it was when Jesus Christ died on the cross.
No, that's
Then
not-
The beginning of sorrows started then.
Yeah. The
And that's
beginning
where
of
my
sorrows,
mind
yes.
is at.
Because
Now,
the
There were
Bible
things
tells
happening
you.
before that.
Yeah, but that ended, and then this new dispensation begins, and
Right.
we have seen rumors of wars since that time, but it's going to increase. We're gonna see it becoming more and more rapid, but it started then when he died on the cross, I believe.
and that's what I'm thinking also, and only because in in Acts chapter 2, the second chapter, Peter said the last days started back then. So if the last days started back then, I think the beginning of sorrows started back then. But I can't find no reference for it. It's only my thought now. And that's what we were preaching against today, like a private interpretation. And so, but it is a definite time that's in the Bible, the beginning of sorrows, here in verses 4 to 8. The signs of the times have always been in the earth. They've always been here. So if we look at the signs, many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, shall deceive many. So after Christ died on the cross, and even before, how many people came saying they were Christ or Messiah? So, and they'll deceive many. But after Christ died on a cross, now look at how many people are coming, cults, in his name. I'm a Christian.
Mhm.
But their gospel is not his gospel. So, and they'll deceive many. They've got a deceptive gospel. Now, you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars, and we're commanded that this is not the end, meaning the end of the beginning of sorrows. We haven't reached the end of the beginning of sorrows. This isn't it. Now, the signs that are here for the beginning of sorrows, we can look around the world and see, oh, these are all here. Nation rising against nation, kingdom against kingdom, famines and pestilences. Like when you look at that word pestilence, that's diseases, certain types of things like HIV, things that we haven't had, and things that we have had that are multiplying. AIDS, the flesh-eating disease, earthquakes in diverse places. And it says it's only the beginning of the sorrows. So you've got to look at these signs, and now let's go to Romans 8:22. Romans 8:22.
For we know that the whole creation groans and travaileth in pain together until now. And not
So
only
Paul's saying back then, here's another thought. He's saying back then, the creation was in pain and groaning and travailing like a pregnant woman. He's saying back then, all creation is groaning. But if the labor pains started back then and still Christ didn't appear, what are the labor pains for? It's for the church to bring forth the sons of God. It's for the man-child to come out of the woman, which is destined for the middle of the tribulation.
Mhm.
Revelation 12. We'll look at Revelation 12. What produces the labor pains are all the troubles. So the signs that we just read back here, Matthew 24, they must increase like a woman's pregnancy. The closer it gets to Jesus coming, the closer it gets for the man-child to be born, these signs speed up. These are the labor pains. So the earthquakes increase. They become rapid. Just like a woman's labor. It speeds up the closer it becomes. When the child's going to actually, the woman will give birth and the child's going to come out of the womb, and the labor pain just speeds up, and that's what's going to happen here. So these are the beginning of sorrows.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So as Christ's return gets closer, pretty much all the things that he prophesied in verse 4 to 8 is what's gonna keep being more rampant and be more diverse.
That's it. That's how, you see, because those signs have been there from the days of Christ. But the big difference in the days of Christ, maybe they had an earthquake every 100 or every 200 years.
Wasn't there an earthquake right after he gave up the ghost?
Yep.
So that was the first one?
On the day that,
No,
no,
there was more.
on the day that he gave up the ghost. But if you wanna say that started this whole mess as a sign, sure,
Could have been.
Yeah.
that's a
Hopefully it's
sign.
got dark.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then there was that
There
first
was lightning.
earthquake.
Lightning.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Evil just like suspended.
and when we, that helped, love, thank you.
That's why you need the light.
And there was two more.
Okay, verses 9 to 14.
Light has come.
These particular verses are given to the 3.5-year trip, the beginning. This is the 3.5-year trip. And these signs that are here in the 3.5-year trip, this looks identical to what we read in Matthew 10. It doesn't look any different. You'll see it fits into this category because we just had the end of the beginning of sorrows. It's just ended in verse 8, and this is the next event, the 3.5-year trip. So it says, they shall deliver you up for his name's sake. So he's not talking about Jews here, he's talking about Christians. There are people, especially in the Baptist church, they want to argue that these are all Jews.
Hmm.
How can you even make an argument like that these are Jews, when they have his name? It's just not possible. The Jews do not carry his name. And the Jews are the ones that are going to be killing them in the synagogue. So they're going to kill them, those people with his name. So you can't, you're redundant trying to say it's the Jews killing the Jews. No, it's the Jews killing the Jews that are Christian, those that are born again. Yeah.
So sad how they're getting Christian. The Jews getting Christian.
So as soon as we enter into the 7-year tribulation, the first 3.5, these are our signs. Many will be offended, many who? Many Christian or many unsaved?
Honestly, they're offended right now. They're attacking Christians right now.
I think
No,
this
it's
is about Christians being bewildered. What happened? Do you know the doctrine of the premillennial rapture is rampant all around the world? Most churches, Pentecostal, Baptist, they all, anything that's an amillennialist, they all preach, okay, we're gonna get out of here. And it's not so. But what's that gonna do to their faith when they see the tribulation starting? There's the Antichrist, and the rapture didn't happen. Right? Because they're all expecting the rapture to happen. It's a huge error, spirit of error, that's going to deceive people. And it says here, they're going to be offended, they're going to betray one another, they're going to hate one another.
Is one another gaining, like maybe other Christians that don't have the same doctrine as them? Or
I al-
each other
I
within
also-
their doctrine?
Well, think about this. In Israel right now, you've got people that are Christian, but their bloodline is Jewish. And they've still got Jewish family. And the Jewish family know, that's my brother, yeah, but he's a Christian.
They're gonna be quick to sell him out.
That's it. And this is going on. See, you've got to watch what Christ is talking about. He's pinpointing Israel here in his discourse. He's pinpointing that area. So we're talking about Jews here that are unsaved, and they're going to be persecuting and offending and betraying even their children. Now the false prophets are going to arise to deceive many. It's a good thing I learned a little bit about the Quran, because there's coming a Muslim Jesus with the Mahdi. The Mahdi for the Muslim, for us, that's the Antichrist. But for them, that's the man that's going to rule and reign, and this is the one that's going to bring them out of any kind of trouble and make them kings over everybody. The Mahdi, he's the one that's going to give out the mark of the beast. We call the Antichrist Mark 666. But the Muslims call in the Quran, they call it the mark to prove you're a Muslim, that you are standing for Islam. It says that they've got to receive it for 7 years.
7, eh?
Yeah. It's incredible. It's like they're following pieces of this, you know, from, you've got to remember when that Quran was put together, they didn't have a Bible. They had all of these false gospels that were called Gnostic gospels, and they had Jewish traditional writings, and they kind of took little pieces and scraps here and there, and they tried to piece it all together. And it was just a mess that they ended up with. But so keep your eye on the false prophets, because you do have a Muslim Jesus that's coming. And that false prophet, along with the Antichrist, the Mahdi. So iniquity is going to get worse during the 3.5-year tribulation. So you think it's bad right now with homosexuals all through Israel. And they put Jerusalem as their capital.
That's the shocking.
The capital of all homosexuality they put is Jerusalem.
Did you know that? Yeah, they do. They have one of the biggest gay parade celebrations is in Israel right now. People from all over the world go there, right? You
Yeah.
can see it on the internet.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, one of the things we need to account for, we don't need to account for, but we will see it manifested. One of the methods will be highly used to persecute Christianity and to be used to ban the Bible, okay, is the anti-Semitism law that's being passed around.
Amen.
The method is just gonna be used. I think it will be one of the signs as Christians that we will know right
Well,
there. The
we'll soon-
homosexual movement is already starting to use their tactics to harass merchants and, people, Christian people in business.
We'll soon find out about that, evangelist, if it happens or it doesn't happen. We'll soon know when this tribulation starts, but I understand the statement you're bringing out. The Jews have used that to really silence a lot of Christians all over the world. All right, in verse number 13, let's look at verse 13. Here we have the same statement as chapter 10. He that endures unto the end. So here's the exact same thing being taught. And notice the time that it's in is in the 3.5-year trib. That's why I said chapter 10 fits right in here. He that endures unto the end, the same shall be saved. So enduring to the end of the tribulation, you're saved from the great tribulation. And then in verse 14, we have the gospel of the kingdom, not just the gospel, but the gospel of the kingdom being preached in all the world. And then it says the end comes. Well, you can't read that as the end of the world, because you've got verse 15 and a continuation of what's going on in the world. So it's not the end of the world, it's the end of the tribulation, the end of the 3.5 year. Because now we're going to start the last 3.5 year called the Great Trib. So in verse number 15, we're going to see the division. Christ is centered on Israel. He's talking about, number 1, the abomination of desolation. Now, the word desolate, have you ever seen a desert? A desert is desolate. You're going to empty something out. Okay? What we're looking at is the Antichrist coming into Israel to slaughter the Jewish people. He'll take